So across it, so I will be here for presenting Python for data analysis, and across the span of 3 days of the program, I will be covering topics ranging from data types and structures, descriptive analysis, data visualization, and a test of hypothesis. But before moving on to the first topic, that is data types and structures, I would be covering or recapitulating some basic concepts such as what is a variable and how to initialize a variable and something related to that. So what is exactly a variable? Variables are name memory locations to store values. Based on the type of the data that we are going to store, the interpreter allocates memory accordingly and assigns a name. Also, if I just present you with an example, just imagine this as a memory location, 4 memory locations, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to assign one or any number to it. For example, I want to assign one to any of the memory blocks present to me. I can simply allocate to it, but the problem would be that it is allocated to the memory, some part of the memory, but it doesn't have a name. So the computer or the interpreter, or for me instance, I will not be able to tell the interpreter where is it actually stored. That is why I have to assign it some name. That is why I assign it X. Now X is a variable which has a value 1, and that is why it's called a variable, and 1 is called its value. And the process of initializing a variable to its value, here X is equal to 1, I would say this is called initializing a variable, or initiating a variable, or declaring a variable. Then in Python, I just declare it X is equal to 1. So here X is the variable and I am assigning a value 1 to it. So I would just say X equal to 1, or I am assigning X a value 1. Now, moving to the first topic of the lecture, data type and structures. Like any other Python, like any other programming language, Python has its own set of data types and structures, ranging from Boolean, numeric, dictionary, set, arrays. It may be strings, tuple, list, or data frames. In my subsequent slides or in the Spider ID, I would be covering each of the data types and structures so as to elaborate you how are they used and when are they used. Let me quickly move to that Spider. And before moving, I hope everyone has opened the Spider IDE. While Sir was delivering the lecture, I also I saw this some questions. Why are we actually using Spider? Why can't we go for Jupyter as such? So Anaconda, let me tell you in some brief. Anaconda is an open source distribution which encompasses both R and Python. But Python is the programming language that we're studying right now. And if you want to run Python, you need an application where you can run your codes. So Spider is an application where you can run your codes. Similarly, Jupyter Lab, Google Colab, all these are, or RPTL, all these are applications where you can run your commands and see the results on the console. Now, having opened the Spider ID in front of you, let me show it to you. What does this comprise of? So you can see the screen is bifurcated into 3 major parts. The first part is where I can write the code, all the commands. Here on my top right corner is a variable explorer where you can see all the variables that are initialized, their name, their type, and what is the size. Similarly, while I will be running subsequent commands in the Spider code itself, you will be able to see all the I will guide you through how is it defined here. How can you see in the variable explorer? Also, if you see in the console, you can see all these commands outputs in the console. So let me quickly move to it. As Sir has mentioned, what are the different major types of Python libraries? Let me quickly recapitulate it. So Python has a huge repository of libraries, different libraries which are inbuilt or which were made by the maker, or you can also contribute to the libraries as well. So how does a library help, and what exactly is a library? So Python library is a reusable chunk of code which you can use it again and again in your code to avoid complex calculations or something like that. For example, let me give an example of a mean function. A mean can also be calculated by simple as sum and divided by its number of observations. But if you want to calculate mean of a huge number of observations, you can simply use a Python mean function that is present in NumPy or statistics library. And that is why we import all these libraries. So just importing means we are calling these libraries so that we can use in the subsequent part in our code. And it's a good practice that you declare all these libraries, or you import all these libraries rather, in the starting of your code itself. Right now I've declared math, statistics, NumPy, or SciPy or Pandas here itself. There are numerous libraries, and when you be progressing in your Python career or your in Python programming, you will see that all the libraries should be listed at the starting of the code itself. And these have and there's a huge chunk of code, for example, even for visualization, where you can simply take them and import them. For example, even for visualization, I need not go and plot all these points separately. That is where there's a separate function or separate library meant for that, called matplotlib or seaborn or plotly, where you can simply import them and enable its functionalities. So right now I've imported all these libraries, import statistics, NumPy, SciPy, and Pandas. Let me quickly move to this. So as I said, the numeric data type is type of data type in Python. So it can either be integer, where it can be a whole number and it doesn't have a decimal point. It can either be a float number, or I would say it has a decimal point. Or it can be a complex number, as we have in mathematics, where it has a real part and an imaginary part. So how do we declare all these variables in Python? We simply write, just quickly pay attention on my screen. Also, I would like everyone to open the scripts that was shared to you. Just open, I will guide you how to open it as well. For example, if you see there's I hope everyone has downloaded all the scripts. So it will be easier for you to see my screen and try the commands at your end as well. And if you're not able to try those commands, you may try it after the lecture is finished. But I would suggest you pay attention and try to understand the basic nuances of Python, so that you're able to grasp it at the end of the lecture. So just if I hope everyone has downloaded, so just open, just click on File, click on Open. And this is the file that has been shared with you, LU Python first day. This is a py file that you have to open. Just simply open it. It's like any other Word document, anything like that. Just simply open this, and it will open in Spider, because I will be explaining in Spider, so you can open in Spider. All those for whom the Spider is not working, or they are facing some installation challenges, you can just open the text script of it that has been shared with you and try to copy those commands on RPTL or Jupyter or Google Colab. That will be sufficient for you. So let me tell you now, getting back, how to initialize a numeric variable or a floating point variable, how to do that. For example, if I simply type x equal to 1, x equal to 1. So there are different methods to run it. You can either select it and press Ctrl plus Enter. You can select and right click and press F9, anything that you can do. It depends on you. X equal to 1, just select. So now you can see, as I mentioned earlier, Variable Explorer has a variable x. It is of type int or type integer, and it's of size 1 because only one element is present. Now if I want to declare a floating point number, I would just write 3.5677 and declare it again. So as I mentioned, how do we declare it? X equal to 3.56. Now X has been, because I have just replaced the variable, that is why now X has become a floating point number and it stores a value 3.5567. Now if I declare it as a complex number, I would write as 4 plus 5j. In mathematics, we write as I, but in Python, we write as j. So please garner your attention here. This is how we declare a numeric data type. It can be integer, it can be a floating point number, or it can be a complex number. Now moving to a Boolean number. A Boolean variable or Boolean data type is one which stores values either true or false. It is usually used to compare values which are for inequality or inequality expressions. So that is why, for example, let me show you with an example. Here I have declared a variable x is equal to 3, y is equal to 3. I want to check if both are equal or not. I'll just press F9 or just run that thing. 1 second. So true. Obviously, it is giving a true because x and y are both equal. If they had not been equal, as in this in the latter part of the code, as I have mentioned, x equal to 3 and y is equal to 4, then x is equal to y, it will give me a false value. Simple as that. So Boolean always stores value true and false. Now, sequence time. These are one of the major data types that are there in Python, and you will start your Python programming, you will encounter a lot of time that you will declare a list or declare a tuple or a string. So, what exactly is a list? And a list is a mutable ordered sequence of data types that are there as a collection, but are mixed types. We always define this within square brackets, and the elements are separated by a comma. While a tuple is an immutable order sequence of items, and it's always enclosed within parentheses, and or I would say a simple brackets, and its elements is also stored separated by a comma. Also, one more thing. I have mentioned what mutable and immutable. These are very important in terms of list and tuple because I will explain you why. Mutable means the jargon mutable is used when a particular element can be changed. A particular element can be replaced by some other element. A tuple is immutable. For example, its value cannot be changed throughout the program. I will explain you in subsequent part of my code as well that how do we actually change it and why is it not changeable and why is it not immutable. Excuse me. And strings. Strings are the sequence of characters that are enclosed between a double quotes or a single quotes. So as I said, a list is an ordered sequence of items that is stored within two square brackets as I have defined here, and it can have two mixed data types as well. For example, 34 is an integer and ABC is a string, so I can have it together as well. That's not a problem. You can store it together. While in a tuple, you always have to enclose within small brackets like this, square brackets or parentheses, I would say. And it can also have mixed data type. Hello, am I audible? Huh.
Yes, you are audible, Hitesh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, so this is how we declare a list. This is how we declare a tuple. Now, if you have to declare a string, we can just enclose it between two single quotes or a double quotes. So, for example, now I will just run it like this. You can run this command at your end as well, so between two square brackets. And now see, there's a list declared. And Python is a unique facility in Spider where it can actually tell you what data type is or which element is of which type. For example, if it's a string type, 34 is of int type, and 4.3 is a float type, and 23 is of int type. Everything is there. And tuple, for example, and now we can declare a string. Now we can declare a string. We can declare a tuple as well. Now I'm declaring a tuple. You can see a tuple has also been declared. See, it is already mentioned which type of data it is, which data type. Similarly, if you see for string, which type of string it is. So either you can, if you have a single line string, you can enclose between single quotes or double quotes. But if you have a multi-line string, then you can enclose within 3 quotes. Example I have mentioned below, or you can also see it on my screen. While I am typing, you can try it from your end as well. I will wait for a few minutes. That's not a problem. This is a string. If I try, this is a string. Has already been. No, for example, if I want to write in 2 different lines, I want to write like this as well. See, this is a thing, and because I have a new line character, that is mentioned as slash. I hope everyone has understood different sequence types. Now moving to how can we access elements or inside a tuple or a list or a string. But before moving to that, let me tell you or elaborate you about what is indexing and how do we access elements to it. So I will just share my whiteboard. For example, there are 3 ground rules in Python indexing. Whenever you are starting from your left, it should always start from 0. Your index should start from 0, and you have to increase it. You have to increase it by 1, then 2, then 3, 4, and 5. This is the indexing. Indexing is nothing, but it is just telling me what is the position of the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the indexing, how it can be done. Now if you want to do indexing from your left hand side, it won't start from 0, rather it will go from -1, and again you have to increase it by 1, and you will go less than -1, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So this is the first. These are the 2 ground rules. If you're starting from left, your indexing would start from 0, and if you're starting from your right, your indexing will start from -1. So indexing is nothing but your position of the data that you are storing. Also, the third ground rule is, for example, let us go back here. Here I have mentioned 23 ABC 4.56 2,3 in DF as my tuple. Let us see how it is stored in terms of indexing. So ABC would be stored here, 23 would be stored here, and so on. So it will be there as it is. And similarly, but only the position at 0, then I would say at 0 position ABC is there, at 1 position 23 is there, at 2nd position the other elements are there. Also, the third ground rule that I was mentioning is, always keep in mind the number of indices or the last element index will always be less than the number of elements. For example, I have, now let us count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I have 5 elements in this tuple. And if I have to just decrease, if I have to know the last index, I would just say it will be 4. So DF would be at the 4th position. Always. These are 3 ground rules. Also, the 4th ground rule, I would say, for any data type in Python, whether it's an array, whether it's a tuple, whether it's a list, it's a string or a data frame, whenever you're starting from left hand side, you should always start from 0. And it will just keep this in mind, because it will help you while you will be progressing in your Python program. And now if I access the element, for example, I want to access the first element. So the first element would be 0, 1, ABC. I will simply write 1 under square brackets and simply run this. Just let me run this. Tuple has been declared, and if I write Q1, it will be ABC. So now you have accessed this element. Before now, I have explained in Spider. Let me also tell you how to do it in Google Colab. So I think I forgot to tell you about Google Colab. Let me simply go to Google Colab and tell you how you can do in Google Colab or a Jupyter, anything like that. One second. Either you can open Google Colab or you can open. For all those who haven't installed or there's a technical glitch installing Spider. For example, here you can just go to new now. You can just type in Google Colab. It will open to a link or Google Colab or research, something like that. Google research Google. So this Google Colab is a repository or a collaborative tool that has been created by Google across so that people across the world can improve their R or Python skills by simply typing. Because not everyone has the GPU or the space that is needed for installing Python and everything like that. You can just type in. Then, as soon as you open this window, a new pop-up window will open like this. You can go to new notebook. It will take 2 or 3 seconds to open Google Colab. Just be patient. Yeah. So as I was typing Spider commands there, you can simply write here as well. Here also you can open a new notebook file. You can edit. You can and do other stuff as well. For example, if you have to declare something, same thing here. For example, all those who cannot open py files here and want to copy, then simply copy from there. Let me show it to you. Simply copy it from here. And press Shift plus Enter. This means it's still running. And just press T. So it will just execute it. See, it has already stored. But the basic difference between Google Colab, Jupyter, and Spider is that Spider you can work on offline apps, but for Google Colab and Jupyter you need an active internet for that, and that is why I was referring Spider, because not everyone has a seamless internet flow. And now, if you want to access, as I mentioned, just copy paste commands from there and do it like this. I will just give you an example. Rest you can. I will continue do it in Spider. You can just see it how is it executed. ABC. Simply copy it from there and type in here. That's it. I hope it's clear. Now let me move to the second to the subsequent part of my code. As tuple is mentioned. As tuple is there, now if I want to, I have already addressed as tuple 1. Now if I want to access the negative element, or if I want to access it from the left hand side, for example, here I have mentioned -3. So -3 would be giving me elements from -1, -2, -3. So it should ideally give me value 4.56. Let's try. See, 4.56. Now you can also try for other elements as well. Just you can try all these commands when the lecture is finished. First try to understand. This is more important, because if you have any doubts and you're not able to run some command, there's an error in it, anything like that, we can simply discuss in the next day as well. That is tomorrow. But first try to understand, because this is important. -3 is there. If I want to access -1, so because I'm accessing -1, should ideally give me DEF. And let us see it has given me or not. Simply select it, press F9, or simply select it, or you can simply run correct selection. You can simply press it like this. It has given me like that. Also, as I mentioned, the third ground rule, that the last index will always be 1 less than the number of elements in the tuple. So that is why, for example, if I write 4, it should ideally give me DEF. But you say, because there are 5 elements, I will write T is equal to 5. Let us see that. What error does it give? Tuple index out of range. That is why I said the last index of the element is always one less than the number of elements in that tuple or list or string or any sequence per se. As I have done accessing elements in tuple, I am showing in list as well. So I have declared a list ABC34. Just declare it within square brackets. As you can see, I have declared within square brackets. Now I want to access the second element or second element of the list. So I will just write li1, or I would say 0, 1, 1th element. I would say, if I want to address the third element, 0, 1, 2, 3, it will give me the third element, 23. But if I write li is equal to 4, it should give me an error, and you can see it as well, index out of range. So that is why always the last index should be one. Index of the last element should always be one less than the number of elements in the list, the tuple, or any sequence type. Now, if we see in a string, I have declared a string hello world, which is a very common term that we use in programming. Hello world. Now, if I want to access the 6th element or the 10th element, the 7th element. So, give me O. So it has given me 7th element from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So O just after W. Just give me the 7th element by indexing. If I write 6th, it should give me W. You can try it from your end, from at your Spider or Google Colab window as well. Now slicing. So previously, just now I discussed how do we access element, how do we want to extract element from a list or any sequence type. Now slicing. Slicing is nothing but getting a part of the sequence. For example, if I have a list or where I have defined a tuple 23 ABC and it's like this, and I want to access element just from first till the last. I will just write 1:4. Every time you have to write the initial, on your left hand side, you have to write the index of the variable index from which you have to start, inclusive of that. And on your left hand side, on left side of the colon, you have to write the index which we don't want to include. Or for example, if you have written 4, it will always return one element before the index, before the second index. You can see it as well. I will explain it again. See, it has gone from 1, 2, 3. So it will always access the first element, the second element, and one less than the element that is specified here. Index of the variable that is specified here. Always. 1. Now I can show it to you again. 1 and 3. So it will give me data from 1 to only, because it will not include 3 in it. ABC and 4.56. Now if you want to include elements from 1 is to 5, it will give me all the elements in the list, the tuple. ABC 4.56, 2 comma, and D. Simple as that. So right index is inclusive of the element, and your second index is exclusive of that element. Or I would say it just gives the element just before that the right index or second index. Now, as I already mentioned that we have either you can index by 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or we can, if you want to index it from your left hand side, -1, -2, -4, you can slice it also in the same way. If you want it, now how? If I want you from 1, so it will give me outputs from 1, 2 until -2. So this is quite tricky, try to understand. -1 is DF, -2 is 2, 3, and I already mentioned 1 less than this. So 1 less than -1 is -2. So this is nothing but 1 till -2. So all elements till 1 till -2 will be all elements from 1 till -2 will be will be shown on the console. See, ABC 4.56 in 2, 3, because this was at the -2 location. Always, this is a ground rule I said. Where the second index should this index will always be exclusive. You will always get element 1 less than this index. Now coming back to the mutability. This mutability and tuple mutability. As I mentioned while I was explaining a definition and declaration of a list in tuple, so mutability is used to explain that any element can be replaced or can be updated. Is called mutability. If an element cannot be updated or cannot be changed throughout the part of the code, it is called immutable. For example, we have a list here, ABC. I'm just declaring the list. And I want to replace the 1th element, that is 23, by 45. I will simply write L comma 1, L square bracket 1 is equal to 45. Simple as that. And what I will see is 23 has been replaced by 45. See. I hope it's visible. Similarly, if you want to change it, any other element, for example, if you want to change for ABC or LH0 itself, GEF. LH0 is ABC. I want to get it changed to GEF. I will simply write like this. It's simply a simple assignment. It will simply update it. If I see LI now, it is GEF 45. See, it has been replaced. Also, so that is why we say list is mutable, or elements of the list can be changed. While tuples are immutable, tuple elements cannot be changed. For example, if I have declared a tuple like this, if I want to replace it, 23 AB4, if I want to just replace the second element, 4.56 by 3.114, it won't replace. It should give me an error because tuples are immutable, or it cannot be replaced. See, does not support an item assignment. I would say it has not replaced. So in a list, we can always, as I mentioned, we can always update an element. We can always replace an element, but in a tuple, we cannot do like that. It is not possible, and that is why so a basic question that may arise, that if both tuples and lists are same, Then why do we? Because it can store both mixed data type, uh, any type kind of data type. Then why are tuples in list used? Why is it list used? Because it can be changed also. So the reason behind this, when we have a long code of 1000 lines or 2000 lines, and we may tend to forget some of the variables that we have initialized. And that is the reason that we may initialize a variable by a tuple. So that in the later part of the code, when we're trying to change it, it should give me an error and give me an indication that it has already been declared before and it should not be replaced. And that is one of the important thing that most of the programmers follow. Instead of a list, they declare a tuple. If they don't want the elements of that tuple to be changed throughout their program. If you want the list to be changed or to be updated, then you can simply use this. This is a very universal use data type. You can simply use it. But if you want tuple to be used, then be sure about that its elements cannot be updated or changed because it's immutable. Now moving on to operations. So we have covered how we declare a list.
Sir, Mr. Hitesh,
Yes.
our participants are actually new to Python. I would request you to go a little slow, like really slow, please. They are not able to understand. You're going really fast. Please go really slow. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you for that help, for the insight. Keep that in mind. So now the basic operations that we can have in a list or a tuple or a string. For example, if I have declared a list like this, and it's a list because it has been declared with brackets, and I want to append an element to it, any element to it. Or append means I want to concatenate an element or concatenate a value at the end of this list. For example, if I have li like this, and if I want to add a just after 5, so I will just simply use append function. You can see li dot append a 11134 and see now you can see a has been appended at the end of this of the list. But one of the major things that you should remember about append is you can only add one element at a time or one value at a time. For example, here I have added a. If I want to add append 9. One, 3, 4, 5, a, comma 9. So see it has appended at the right of the actual list, and now the new string is appended with or concatenated with 9. But as I said earlier, it only adds one element at a time. Now if you have to add many elements at a time, then you use a function called extend. It, as the name signifies, or as the name literally means, it extends the list or a tuple by the number of elements that are specified. For example, I have li like this. Simply note li dot extend. It will automatically add 987 at the end of my list. You can see it. See 1, 11, 3, 4, 5, 9, 8, and 7. Similarly, if you want to insert an element at a particular place, for example, if I want to insert I at second element, second position, so I will just use a function insert second, and you will see it has been inserted just after 11th and before 3rd, because first is at 0 position, 11th is at first position, first is at 0th position, 11th is at first position, and 3rd is at second position. So it will just simply shift all the elements and be inserted at the second element. So now second would be our second element. See, it has been inserted just after 11th and below and above and before 3. You can simply copy from here, from my screen, or just pay attention to understand it, and afterwards you can see it from your code as well. Now, if I want to remove some elements, I will simply use remove command. So remove will remove the element that is specifying it from the list itself. Now it will automatically remove 11 from the list. See, now the new list is 1, I, 3, 4. 11 has been automatically removed. If I type li.remove, it will remove 4 as well. Again, remove will only remove one element at a time. So this is the function that we have covered is append. Append is used to concatenate elements to the right of the list or a tuple, but one element at a time. Extend is used to add or concatenate elements or values at the end of a list at the right, but you can have many values together. This is the basic difference between append and extend. Insert is used to insert at a particular location. Why? Because append and extend always concatenate an element at the right of the list, while insert inserts at a particular location that we wish for. Remove the element that we specify. Now the reverse function will simply reverse the list itself. For example, here we have 5, 2, 6, 8. It will have 8, 6, 2, 5. See, simple as that. I hope it's clear. Now moving on to plus operator. So plus operator is usually used to concatenate two sequences. For example, we have sequence types like list, tuple, or string. If you want to concatenate them, or if you want to, excuse me, produce a new tuple or a new list by combining both the sequences. For example, I have 1, 2, 3 as my first tuple and 4, 5, 6 as my second tuple. Now I want to combine both the elements together. So that combining or concatenating it will just give me a new tuple with the elements 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. You simply execute it and see what does it give. See, first there were two tuples 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. Now we have a new tuple 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. Similarly, for a list, we have 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5 in a list. There are two lists. If you want to use a plus operator between them, I will simply put a plus operator between them and I will get a new list altogether with elements, all the elements. It will consider universal set of all the elements that are present in both the lists or a tuple. See, I have a new list in front of me. Now, if I want to concatenate two strings together, I can simply write hello. I have specified some space also in between. You can remove it as well. So there are two strings. I put a plus operator between them. So it's hello world. If I write this, see, there's no space in between. That is why I specified an empty string. An empty string is nothing but space between two single quotes or a double quotes. So if you don't specify like that, then and concatenate it with using plus operator, it won't give any space in between, and it will be slightly confusing to understand. This is how we use a plus operator to concatenate two sequences. It can be the list or a tuple or a string to produce a new tuple or list altogether. Now moving on to in operator. So as I said, if I in operator gives me an indication or gives me a value that is Boolean in nature. If you want to check that if an element is present in a list or a tuple or any other sequence, we simply use in operator. So in operator works in a way like that, as I am defining right now. T is equal to 1, 2, 4, 5. If I want to check if a particular element is present in this list or not, I will simply write 3 in T. As simple as that, as simple as in the English language. 3 in T means is, just imagine it is that as a question, is 3 in T or is 3 is present in the list defined by T. And as you can see, 3 is not present, that is why it will give me a false value. False. Because 4 is present and 4, I have specified 4 in T, I'm checking for it, that if 4 is there in T or not, I will simply write 4 in T. It should give me a true. For example, true in the sense this is present in the list or not. Similarly, if I specify 6 in T, it will give me false because 6 is not present in the list. As I have defined in, there is a different keyword called not in. For example, using in, we were checking if this element is present in a particular list or not. But when we use not in, we tend to pose a question or tend to search or check that if is this element not present in T. For example, I will just try to, is 6 not present in T? Simple as that. Just take it as a simple English question. Is T not present in list 1, 2, 3? Yes, it's not present. That is why it will give me a value true. But if I check not in T, because 1 is already present, it will give me a value. Yes, 1 is present. There should give me a value false. Simple as that. It's a negative sentence. That is 1 not present in T. Because 1 is present in T, it is saying false, it is present. Just take in that sense. Similarly, in a string, we can use an in command because string is also a sequence data type. So is C in A? Yes, because A, B, C, D, E is my string. So is C in A? Yes, it should give me true. Is CD, because CD is a sequence, CD is there? Yes, CD is there. It should give me true. Now it's asking AC. Is AC inside A? No, it's not inside A. That is why it will give me a false value. So, and just recapitulating about the operation of the functionality of the in operator, it is a Boolean test to check whether a value is present inside a collection or not. It can be the list, it can be the tuple, or it can be the string. Just this is a simple test, and it will give me value true or false to let me know whether a value is present or not. Now sets. Sets you can simply understand. For example, I have a list, and it has many duplicate values in it. But I only want unique values from this list. So I will simply use set command. So set command is used for a list to give me unique elements. So here you can see I have defined a list 1, 2, 4, 5, and I want to I will just run this thing and it will give me unique elements. So here my unique elements are 1, 2, 4, and 5. So set always returns a unique element. So here my initial list is 1, 2, 4, 5. Here 2 is repeated. That is why set will only return unique elements. And my unique elements are 1, 2, 4, 5. Simple as that. Now moving to dictionaries. So dictionary is one of the major data types. So we have before moving on to dictionary, let us quickly recapitulate what all we have covered. We have covered Boolean, which gives us true and false value. We have covered numeric, which can be either floating point number, it can be a complex number, or it can be an integer. The third thing that we covered is a list, a tuple, and a string. A list is always enclosed within square brackets and its elements are separated by a comma. A tuple is always enclosed within parentheses or small brackets and its elements are also separated by a comma. The major difference between a list and tuple are lists are mutable, that its elements can be changed or updated, whereas tuples are immutable or its elements cannot be replaced or updated. The third thing that now the sets are unique, just gives us unique values from a list or a collection. Now we will go to dictionaries. So for dictionaries, let me open my whiteboard. Let's take an example of two sets, set 1, set 2. Set 1 has values 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this has value 5, 6, 7. Now, we can have one-to-one mapping or we can have many-to-one mapping. A dictionary, this is set 1, this is set 2. A dictionary always has one-to-one mapping from set 1 to set 2. So for example, 1 will correspond to 5, 2 will correspond to 6, 3 will correspond to 7. Just omit this, let me omit it. So I have 3 elements. 1 corresponds to 5, 1-to-1 mapping, 2 corresponds to 6, and 3 corresponds to 7. Set 1 has 1-to-1 mapping to set 2. But set 2 may have many-to-one mapping. For example, 5 may correspond to 1, and 5 may also correspond to 2 as well. So this is the basic concept behind a dictionary. So dictionary in a dictionary, we have two sets, set 1 or set 2. Just understand on a mathematical point of view. And we have one-to-one mapping from set 1 to set 2. So all the elements in set 1 have one-to-one mapping to set 2. But the elements of set 2 may have many-to-one mapping to set 1. And in Python, set 1 is called as key and set 2 is called as value. And that is why we say a dictionary has a key value pair. So always a dictionary is defined as 1 is to 5, 2 is to 6. I will show in Python script as well. So it always has one-to-one. Simple as that. So set 1 will have always have one-to-one mapping from set 1 to set 2. Now let me show how is it declared in Spider. So as I mentioned, is an unordered collection of the elements which data values and the mapping and how is it mapped. It holds values like a key value pair. It always is declared within a curly braces and its elements are separated by a comma. For example, here you can see this is my key user and bozo is my value, and the elements are separated as by a colon. So this is the one key value pair, and this is one element. The second element which is separated by a comma, and this is my second element. One key and one value. So what you can understand is bozo always corresponds to user. A user always corresponds to bozo, I would say, and PSWD will always correspond to 1, 2, 3, 4. So while you will try to exit user, it will give you the value bozo. So again, I will just recapitulate it again. A dictionary is a mapped collection where it can store different data types and it has one-to-one mapping. For example, user is mapped to bozo and PSW is mapped to 1, 2, 3, 4. Mapping in the sense it has one-to-one mapping to it, or it is just it's a pair. It always work in pair. And if you want to access user, it will all you cannot access bozo and you can access, but if you access user, it will give you the value bozo, as I mentioned. Now dictionaries can also be updated. Dictionaries are d user is equal to clown. So I will just update 1 second. Let me update it with this. All the element or the value of user has been updated to clown. You cannot update a key, but you can update a value. Always remember this. This is one of the most important rules in Python in dictionaries. So while I had a dictionary which had value bozo, now I'm trying to replace or trying to update this value with clown, the user clown, and now my new dictionary will be user clown and password 1, 2, 3, 4. If I want to add a new key value pair, I will simply initiate the ID is equal to 45. Simple initialization. A new key value pair has been added. List. So as you can see, we have initialized and the dictionary has been extended. Now if you want, these are simple commands to see what are the keys present in my dictionary. If you simply write d comma keys, all the keys have come. So my d was user, PSWD and ID. If I simply write d comma keys command, I will have all the keys executed in front of me and it will be presented on my console window. User, password and ID. Similarly, if I just want the values of all the keys, I'm not concerned about the keys, I'm just concerned about the values. I will simply write d dot values. It has clown 1, 2, 3, 4. All the values will be there. See, clown 1, 2, 3, 4 and 45. All the values will be present. Similarly, if I want to say items will give me key value pair. User is assigned to clown, password is assigned to 1, 2, 3, 4, 45 assigned to ID. So it will just give me an element that are present in the dictionary. Simple as that. A dictionary is always defined within curly brackets and is always has a key value pair. A key and a value. A key and a value. Moving on to this, I think I'm shooting up my time. So kindly allow me 5 more minutes. I will just complete some of the basic types and I will complete rest of the data analysis tomorrow. Then now quickly moving to arrays. You can jump into line 643. An array, so we have covered list, we have covered dictionaries, we have covered strings, we have covered tuples, we have covered numeric data types, we have covered Boolean data types. Now arrays. An array is a collection of elements of the same data type. So if you say what is the difference between an array and a list, the basic difference between an array and a list is lists can have different data types within it, but an array should always have the same data type. This is one of the basic difference between an array and a list. Also, you can see is initialization. How we declare it. You can see np.array, because array is a function of NumPy library. That is why it is there, np.array. It is trying to declare a zero-dimensional array. That is why it's called np.array. Then, one second. np.array, it has declared a zero-dimensional array. But and if you want to declare a one-dimensional array, so a one-dimensional array, it has one row in it. So it's called a one-dimensional array. A zero-dimensional array means it has no row, but it has only one element. It has no row or column as such. But in one-dimensional array, it has one row in it. That is why it is said a one-dimensional array. You can simply declare it like this. Declare all the elements within square brackets and enclose with and write np.array function after that. And see, you can see it how it has been declared. B32, it's an array and it has elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if you want to declare a 2D array will have 2 cross 2, or it can have not exactly 2 cross 2, it will have a row and column, it has 2 rows to it. For example, np.array has been declared. If you see there are 2 rows to it, 1, 4, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. But if you see B, it has only 1 row, whereas C has 2 rows, and that is why this is a 2-dimensional array. A 3-dimensional array will have 3 rows. I would say in a layman language, it will have 3 rows. 3-dimensional. If you want to see D, 1, 2, 3. Just imagine it as a 3D data collection. And always remember, an array always stores data of the same data type. It cannot have strings or integers together. It can have either integers or integer floating point numbers, or either strings altogether. It cannot have strings and floating point numbers, or strings or integers together. It cannot have mixed data types together. If you want to simply check what is the dimension of the array, I will simply write print, and within that I will write a.enddim. It has a dimension. This is a function that we have. If you want to check a dimension of an array, you simply write .enddim. If I want to check what is the dimension of B, it was 1, as I mentioned, it's a 1D array. If I want to check for C, it's a 2D array. To check for D, it's a 3D array. So this is how an array is declared. A data frame. Now a data frame is a very useful part in data analysis when we are dealing with lot of chunk of data, where you can and imagine it is a tabular kind of data or a 2-dimensional kind of a data where you have both rows and columns. A simple example would be, take an Excel sheet. A data frame is kind of an Excel sheet where you have rows and columns. And again, this indexing also starts from 0 until the number of 1 index less than number of columns. Start and again from 0 and 1 index less than the number of elements. Also, as you had seen, arrays and lists can have any number of elements. There is no limit to that. You can even have lists inside lists. You can have a 3D array. You can have 4D array. But the problem, not exactly a problem, but in the data frame, you should always have for all the columns, the number of rows should be equal. Let me show it to you how it is there. For example, one second, let me declare, I think I forgot to declare all these methods. So I have declared a string, or declare a data type, and you can see this is a data frame. Here 1 and 2 are my column names, and these are my rows. So start from 0 till third. Why? Because if you see, there are 4 elements or 4 rows to it. But again, the index will always be 1 less than the number of rows. And also I said, as I mentioned, the number of rows in both the columns should be the same. If they're not same, it will give you an error. And it will show you it's an error. Please, it cannot be declared. This is a kind of data frame. You can just imagine it as an Excel where you have 2 columns, which has headers as 1 and 2. You have values like 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2 as mentioned, and indices as 0 to 1. Again, you should follow the ground rule of indexing. It should start from 0 and should always be 1 less than the number of elements in that data frame, or in that number of elements in that data frame. So you can declare data frame by a list, by a dictionary, anything like that. So here I have declared a dictionary where I have a key value pair 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2, like this. And now we use a keyword .p.data frame. So as I mentioned earlier, pandas is a library that is used to declare a data frame. As we had seen how we had declared an array by writing np.array. If you want to declare a data frame, we use pd.data frame. It will simply declare a data frame. You can always, I can show you once more. For example, I have changed this column. So I'll write it RE. Anything, you can mention any column name, ER, and see, I've declared it. Data is equal to pd dot data frame. See, it's already mentioned in data frame. And within small brackets, you can define D. And see, D has been updated. It has been included data altogether. RE and E are my column names. These are my indices, and these are my values that are being stored. I will tell you how to access these elements, and then we